The Bella twins were stirring up some drama this week as they were not biting their tongue when it came to the WWE and the WWE's use of female talent this week. They were on Tamron Hall. Remember Tamron Hall? I did a clip a couple of weeks ago of Mandy Rose on Tamron Hall. Maybe it was last week already. I don't fucking know. It doesn't matter. Apparently Tamron Hall is a big mark because she's got all these wrestling people on her fucking show all the time. But yeah, the Bella twins were on the show and they were talking about their frustrations with the lack of representation of women on Raw 30. This whole thing came about where the Bella twins were announced to be a part of Raw 30, and then all of a sudden they weren't announced to be a part of Raw 30. I don't know what happened there. I don't know if they pulled out. I don't know if it doesn't seem like it because they're pretty frustrated. It seems like maybe more like they were cut. Maybe they just didn't have the time for them. I mean, same with the cage match on Raw, right? The women's cage match just got turned into an angle because they were apparently running short on time. What do you cut? You cut the women's match. That's what you cut. Bella twins did not hold back. They first took to Instagram, and they were a bit rowdy, shall we say. Check out this clip, and then after that, we'll play the clip of them on Tamron Hall, kind of elaborating on their thoughts about this whole Raw 30 thing.
How didn't they showcase anything from the women's evolution?
But also the way we did our matches
Because
on
Sasha
there,
Banks and they're like, we can't.
and the Bellas, there's a bunch of us. And
Mercedes is too over, and we can't say her name.
There's a couple other girls and Rhea. There's a bunch of us they don't want to show. That's fine.
That's fine.
But beyond the event, as you always do, you rise to such great occasions. You have spoken out about the lack of representation of women at the event and other events. What made you want to, again, defy the odds and say, if we can do it, we want other women in the ring too?
Yeah, well, I think for what anyone does, when you have love and passion for something and you put your heart and your soul in it, you want to be appreciated. And I think that's in any industry. And for us female wrestlers, it was Raw 30, the 30th anniversary. And throughout those 30 years, women have done a whole lot to make Raw what it is.
Yes.
So when you have a 3-hour show and it's male-dominated and women aren't being honored pretty much at all, you just sit back and you're like, why aren't we being appreciated? Like, why don't you even have a video package showcasing what all these incredible women have done? And even when I spoke out,
yes, absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
And it just, I'm someone who they've always called No Filter Nikki.
Oh, yes.
And I know sometimes my team is like back there like, oh my gosh, if we could just take her phone. But I just, it made me upset for all the women because I know that feeling of walking out to the ring. And it happens to some of the men, but where you walk out and you put your body on the line, you give it your all just to entertain the fans and the TV viewers. And you just come back and you want to feel appreciated for that. Some of us have had career-ending injuries and we shouldn't go away. And even if I feel that if a wrestler even leaves a company or they're no longer there, it doesn't mean that they shouldn't be remembered.
100%.
So I wished and I hoped, and maybe that will be more in the future, and we still have a way to go, but that women will finally be appreciated for what they do.
Absolutely, absolutely.
Nikki's kind of an obnoxious chick, isn't she? Brie's a little bit more reserved. She's a little bit more calculated. And Nikki said it. She said it on the Tamron Hall show. She said that people call her No Filter Nikki. It's fun. It's fun to hear people, I'm always up for a little bit of drama. It makes my show more interesting, right? It gives me something to talk about at the very least. But neither one of them were really biting their tongue. They got a hair up their ass about this whole WWE representation thing. And, this has been a subject that's been talked about for quite a while, but this week especially, it's kind of been making the rounds. Jim Cornette actually talked about this as well, as he was talking on the Jim Cornette Experience with Brian Last about women in AEW and just women's in wrestling in general and the use of women and the whole blood thing and all of that. Check out this clip.
What are they fucking doing over there? Well, you know my thought, and it's not just about the bloody women's match. I think women's wrestling, by and large, exists because people in the business may want to support it, and people have been led to believe this is the way it's supposed to be, but I don't think there's a public demand for it. And we've seen, you could talk to people in the arenas, you can look at the ratings. What match are people going to go to the bathroom during? What match are people going to get up and go to the kitchen during? What match are people going to turn off their TVs and not come back during? And there's a reason it's the same segment. Women's wrestling, I'm not saying I have a problem with it in general. I have a problem with it being mixed in the middle of men's shows for no reason because no one's demanding it. The demand is the issue. The industry is forcing something on a fan base that isn't demanding it. There should be a well-run, well-booked, functional women's promotion for top-line women athletes. But it shouldn't just be, okay, it's the women's portion of the show right now. Imagine if it was anyone else. All right, let's turn over the show to the midgets right now. We're going to have the weekly midget segment of the show.
So just to address the blood part of it, and we'll get that out of the way. If a guy can bleed and you're okay with that, a woman can bleed, and you should be okay with that. We're not going to play, because you're either offended because she's a lily flower, soft little fucking pedally fucking thing, that dainty little girl. You don't want to see her get hurt or injured. Look, man, they're out there competing just like the men are. They should be able to bleed just like the men are. Or you're grossed out by it because you don't want to see women bleeding. Either way, those are stupid takes. Those are not reasons to not allow women to bleed. Look, this is simulated combat. It's blood belongs in wrestling for a reason, because you are simulating combat. And if you watched any bit of UFC at all, you will see that there's people get just absolutely busted open multiple times on the show. It's not, they don't save color for the main event like wrestling will do, you know? It is not uncommon to see 4 people get busted open, sometimes just bleeding fucking buckets, spilling all over the fucking map. You know why? Because they're punching each other in the face, and they're kicking each other in the face, and they're kneeing each other in the face. And guess what? In wrestling, you simulate that. So I have no problem, especially when you break out the toys and you do the hardcore and the barbed wire or whatever. Blood should be a part of that. Now, if you don't like to see women do that, I get it, but you're wrong. You don't like to because there's something about women being dainty or pretty or beautiful, or they should be just out there to be fucking eye candy for you. They're not. You're not interested in them performing. You're not interested in them simulating combat. At that point, if you don't want to see a woman bleed in wrestling, then you're not interested in seeing women wrestle. The whole thing in blood in general, I think it gets overused, but I think if it needs to be used, or if a match calls for it, it absolutely should. And I don't see any reason that women should be banned from doing this while men can. It's either all can or none can. But I think blood should be used sparingly, otherwise it doesn't mean as much. When Moxley bleeds every single fucking match, doesn't mean anything anymore. I'm not like, oh God, Moxley's busted over. No, it's like, oh, it's Moxley. He just gets busted over. You become desensitized to it. So that's my little mini rant on the blood part. On the greater aspect of women in wrestling, this is touchy because there's a lot of things at play here. First of all is the argument of representation. This is what the Bella Twins are so bitchy about. Is there's a lot of people out there that are really passionate that everything needs to have representation from everybody, right? If you're going to do a Raw 30 episode and you're going to pay tribute to the legends, you should have a women's package and show what all the women have done over the years and stuff. I don't know about all that. You shouldn't have... It's tough. I'm okay with women's wrestling because the best of the best women's wrestlers are just as good as the men. I'll watch Sasha Banks wrestle Bailey all day long before I'll watch fucking half the shit that's on Monday Night Raw right now. They're fantastic. Charlotte always delivers. She's another great performer in the ring. A Britt Baker match is always fun to watch. Thunder Rosa always had bangers. So, I mean, there are women at a very elite level that are doing this. And I think they deserve as much of a spotlight as anybody else. The problem is that there's two problems. One is that a lot of the other women's wrestlers suck. They're horrible. They're trash. They're going through the motions. I always make fun of this, but they're choreographing. They're going through a fucking dance routine. They're not fighting. They're not scrapping. They're not rough out there, Wrestling should look a little dirty. It shouldn't look like you're going through a fucking ballet act, and then you do this move, and then you do this move, and then you do a PA and a pirouette or whatever the fuck they do. You know what I mean? You fucking triple axle, double fucking whammy splits. You don't need to do that shit. It's a fight. Go out there and punch a bitch in the face. Stomp her. You know what I mean? Get a little fucking bloody lip going. Britt Baker goes out there. She bleeds every other match, man, hard way. Her big ass nose always gets in the way and gets busted open. Poor girl. I think women deserve a spot, but a lot of women suck. And what that does is that tends to draw away fans. That forces fans to go, you know what? This is a good time to get up and go to the bathroom or change the channel and see what else is on TV. And look at the numbers, dude. Women's wrestling almost always, I should say, drives away viewership. That's where the viewership drops off, is a women's match, especially when it's not a main event elite woman. You know what I mean? If it's Charlotte Flair versus Becky Lynch or something, people might sit and watch that. But people aren't going to sit and watch your fucking Lacey Evans versus fucking Carmella. Nobody cares. Nobody gives a fuck. You know what I mean? So how do you fix that? Do you take women off of TV altogether? No. I think they need more training. They need more training, and they need better storylines. There needs to be a reason for guys, because wrestling is primarily a male fan base. There has to be a reason other than the sex and the eye candy and stuff, which is also cringe. I was just watching Royal Rumble 2000 maybe last night. Jerry the King Lawler had all the divas come out and fucking do their little bikini contest, and the crowd votes or whatever. And Mae Young came out, and I was cringing. I couldn't believe they did that shit. And look, I'm a hard guy to offend. I wasn't offended. You're not gonna faze me. But certainly, when you look back at that and watch that, it's pretty fucking cringe with today's eyeballs. You know what I mean? So we've come a long way, but it's really a hard thing, because women's wrestling does drive away viewership, but I think it deserves a place on the roster. And I think, the best of the best are just as good as the men. So it's a tough one. I don't have an exact answer. I would just invest a lot more effort into training the women and kind of knock the powder puff dance routine shit out of their, and I feel like that's getting learned at the bottom level in NXT, because you watch those NXT women's matches, they're just going through the dance routines, and I think whoever's training these fucking models that they bring in that have no indie experience at all, they're being taught how to do moves and how to do a match, but they're not actually doing moves and doing a match. You got to go out there and fight somebody. You know what I mean? And that's the difference. Wrestling is scripted, sure. I get that, but it's not a dance routine either. You should look like you're trying to win a fight, not like you're trying to set up your next fucking flippity-doo. It's just, and that's the same criticism that the Young Bucks get. So it's not completely unique to the women either. A lot of people don't like that spot fest shit, and because it's a dance routine, it's ballet, it's trapeze, it's not a fight. So I think that's the issue there, not so much that just women in general don't belong, but they need a lot of work. They need the work. I don't think look, if they're driving away viewership and shit, I don't think you just give them a spot because we got to represent everybody. You know what I mean? That's it's just not the best way. You don't want to, well, we have to have our obligatory women's wrestling segment. I think we need women's wrestling, but I don't think you just put trash on TV because you just to have it on TV for representation. So put more effort into your women, train them up better, give them more experience, and figure out ways to keep interest, better storylines perhaps. If they're not fun to watch, maybe there's a reason, maybe there's something else you can tie into it. I don't know. It's not an easy fix. Something they're going to have to keep working on. And, I get where the Bella twins are coming from with their outrage over, lack of representation on Raw 30 or whatever, but I don't know. I don't get into let's have a segment on, the women of Raw over the last 30 years. Show a little video package, as Nikki was like. Why? They showed the package at the beginning of the show over the last 30 years, and there was absolutely women involved in that opening package. So I don't know that they need their own little special fucking everything all the time, but they need to be there. And so I don't entirely agree with the Cornette's opposite take on this about women's wrestling or Brian Last, how it should maybe be on its own show or something, and just got to get this shit off of, they're very, for being ultra liberals, they're sure pretty prejudiced against having women, they still very much seem like women should be in the kitchen doing dishes instead of wrestling the fucking wrestling matches. So I don't know. It's a touchy one without any good answer. I guess the only way, like I said, invest more into their storylines and more into their in-ring progression. And I think at that point, if a women's wrestler is good, guys are going to want to watch it. You know what I mean? You don't ever hear a guy going, Jamie Hayter match. Man, I don't want to see that. Because Jamie Hayter goes out there and punches bitches in the face hard. She slams the fuck out of them. Jamie Hayter's a tough bitch. And it comes through on TV. Sasha Banks, she's a scrapper. She'll go out there and she'll have a fucking scrap with you. Charlotte, Becky, all of these women are elite level wrestlers. And you just got to bring everybody else up, give them a good storyline, and I think the fans will follow. I don't think they inherently hate women, but that's just my thoughts, and I've rambled on enough about this. So I'm going to go ahead and move on to the next. But please, if you have a hot take on it, let me know in the comments below. Hey, thanks for checking out that clip. Don't forget to check out other clips here on the channel. And while you're there, throw a like, throw a subscribe. And don't forget to check out full episodes each and every Sunday of the Pro Wrestling Podcast.